Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Success is Complicated podcast. I am RaQuel Hopkins, your host.
And I am Cieara Davis, your co-host.
And it's been a while, almost 2 years. I think the last episode that we recorded was April of 2021. Yeah, a lot has changed for the both of us. Life has been lifing, but overall, life is good. We had a lot of different topics our last podcast, but we're changing it up a bit because as we've evolved, the brand Success is Complicated has evolved as well. And what that means is Success is Complicated is everybody is trying to figure this thing out. Everybody's trying to figure out life. And I don't know that I've met anybody that has it figured out. And this is me speaking from the perspective of a therapist, as a wife, as a mom, as a leadership coach. Like, we are all really trying to figure this thing out. So the purpose of Success is Complicated is to find ways to empower you, to challenge your current perspectives so that you can start engaging in new ways as it relates to your mental health, and also disrupting the way that we talk about mental health. So today, we wanted to talk about just some of the challenges with mental health. What is it? What are we really saying when we say protect your mental health? We really didn't prepare for this episode. If I'm being honest, I've been terrified because I do have different perspectives on mental health. And with it being such a serious situation, I don't want to put information out there that could be negligent or anything. But we're here now. So you want to say anything, Cieara?
So I guess we'll hop right into it, right? The biggest thing is the difference between mental health and mental illness, right? That is where the misconception is.
Okay. So maybe we will start there and just talking about mental health. I think the biggest misconception of mental health is it's something that we're supposed to protect. And within the last 3 years, one of the things that I've done is I've become a therapist, and I've struggled with it because I don't buy into anything that we're selling within the mental health industry. And Cieara's my best friend. Y'all know that. So she gets to hear it all of my frustrations and like all of my concerns. But ultimately, how do we provide value to where people really feel like things are changing? Because the data's not changing. Like, it's all of this awareness around mental health, but yet the numbers are getting worse. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. So mental health is one, I would say, is not something that you protect. It's not something, your mental health is something that's supposed to grow. If you think about how you think, how you feel, and you behave as you get older, that starts to change. Like, there's no reason why at 25 you should still be thinking, feeling, and behaving the same way you did at 20. At 45, there's no reason why you should still be thinking, feeling, and behaving the same way that you did at 35. I mean, you can, but when we start to talk about how we develop as humans, how we develop as adults, it's a little bit more complex than that. So,
and what about so if that's mental health, what is like mental illness?
So mental illness is anything that affects your ability to function. And I think that we all may have experienced moments or times where we're like, something feels off. So mental illness is depression, it's anxiety, it's bipolar disorder, it's schizophrenia, it's a lot of different things. And some of us may have never experienced a mental illness, even though it may have felt like it. But we all have mental health. Not everybody has a mental illness. And there's so much information out there. For example, people always say like high functioning depression, or like you're high functioning. It ain't no such thing as high functioning depression. And when I say never, I've never met a person that was like a high functioning depressed.
Hold on, RaQuel. So I would say I was depressed for a little bit, right? And I was doing all of the things, like all of the things. I was taking care of my kids. I was coming to work. I was going to the gym. I was doing all of the things, but yet I was still depressed. Like, if that ain't high functioning depression, I don't know what is.
I mean, what makes that high functioning though? Because you're continuing to push
all the things.
I mean, when you think about it, like, where some of your decision making off, like, were you, even though you were doing what you needed to do, were you operating at your most optimal state? And that's what I say. Like, if you ain't operating at your most optimal state, like, you can't try to put lipstick on the pig. That's what Mom could say. Like, you can't, because you're not performing at your best.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Just knowing what I know about you, I mean, a lot of times we feel like we don't have a choice, right? Like, I got to get up and take care of my kids. I got to get up and do these things. But just because you're doing those things don't mean that you're doing it in the most effective way. Maybe you took the kids to school, but you're on your own when it comes to that homework because mama just ain't feeling it.
Right.
So I think the term is
left
misleading.
work and you just laid down.
Yeah,
you cooked dinner, but you ain't talked to
misleading.
nobody else that day. Like,
the term is really misleading, and I think that you know when it comes to, like, there's a look in terms of what depression looks like. There's never been a look, because depression is a mood disorder.
Right.
So there's no such thing. You can be the person that's spreading a lot of light, spreading a lot of joy, but what still doesn't change is, like, what your mood looks like every single day. So I think that that's important. You know, one of the things is I just did a post on, I'm pivoting a little bit here, but about in the mental health industry, there's a lot of need for validating and making people feel seen, creating a community around mental health. And I think that it's incredible. But I feel like the mental health industry, which is all of us, right? Because a lot of us are buying into the mental health industry because people want to feel well. People want to be validated. People want to be seen. But it's like, I almost feel like it's like how the mental health industry is like, let me give you tips, tools, and tricks to figure out how to beat life, how to win at life. And there's no such thing. You cannot cheat life. You just can't.
You can't cheat life.
You can't. Like, you're gonna go through the pains of the inevitable pains that come with marriage. I know that for sure. Within the last year, you may get fired from a job. You may decide to leave your job, which I decided to do in 2021. Your kids might be bad as hell. Like, I mean, all of the things that you think about that comes with being an adult. Like, you cannot cheat life. And this whole, you know, like, once you've healed, like, certain stuff you just don't do anymore. You can't cheat life. Like,
so I got a question, right? When we go to therapy, do you think people are trying to cheat life in therapy, or do you think people are trying to cheat life in therapy?
Yeah, people want the code. Like, I done been through this. Like, there's a code. Like, give me the code so that life doesn't feel hard anymore. So that I don't find myself suffering anymore. And, like, as you continue to evolve, grow as a person, like, there is no code. And that's what Success is Complicated is about. We're always trying to figure it out. The minute that you think you have it figured out, like, you're probably going to be doomed because things are always changing. So I really do, like, when people come in, they're like, fix me, and they get fixated on becoming fixed, and it just becomes this cycle. And even within that, like, fix me, it's this idea that you're broken. Fundamentally, I don't believe in that. I don't think that anybody is broken. I don't think that people can't be healed. And I think that the minute that you start to take on those perceptions, that's why you start to see people like, oh, Taraji P. Henson recently.
Oh,
like,
no.
I love Taraji.
Let's not go there.
But I seen that video with Angie Martinez, and it kind of caught me off guard. Like, she was like, I thought I was happy at one point. And then she was like, now I just don't know. And the truth is, she probably really did feel like she was happy at one point.
That's what.
And then we negate it. Like, girl, you were happy, but now life is changing. Life is asking for something different from you. Doesn't mean you got to run off to Bali or Thailand or whatever in order to like find yourself again. That's the other thing too, because a lot of people stay in therapy for a long time too.
So I saw the same clip that you're talking about with Taraji P. Henderson, and the part that caught me was I thought I was happy, right? And my take on it was, if you thought you were happy, you probably were. Life is just really requiring something different of you right now. So, and I was explaining this to somebody. I was like, if you're 5 years old and I give you ice cream, it's probably going to make you genuinely happy. But at 30 years old, if you give me ice cream, like, I will not be happy because I'm watching my weight. Like, I'm trying to get to I'm trying to get to my best life. So ice cream at 5 years old will not feel the same that it did. I mean, at 30 years old won't feel the same as it did at 5 years old. Does that mean I was not happy at 5 years old? No, it means that the 30-year-old me requires more from life. And I think that is the part that, I guess interests me. Like, if you thought you were happy, you probably were. Where you are right now today, life may be requiring more from you, a transition. Maybe there is something inside of you that is missing today. And how do people move away from something must be wrong with me because I feel different than I did 2 years ago? I feel different than I did, I don't know, when I was in the thick of it, going through school. And I think things change, right?
Right. Things are always changing. As I was just listening to you talk, I remember when we were kind of like trying to plan for the podcast, and we had talked about like the dangers in over pathologizing like day-to-day life. And for those of you that may not even know, like what the heck is over pathologizing? Like, it's in the medical industry or within this industry, it's when people take on like this medical model or this illness model. So a lot of things that were seen as normal to like our generation now is not normal. To prior generation is not normal today. Having said that, I want to kind of talk about like, let's just dial it back again, because when we're saying that you can't beat life, you can't cheat life, what are some of those things that you can't cheat? Because what ends up happening is we try to avoid bad relationships. We try to avoid any pain in our marriages. We try to do gentle parenting because we want to make sure that our children don't have to heal their inner child, and just so many different things that we're trying to do to get it right. And that concept alone, that like trying to get it right, just, I feel like it robs people so much of like being able to live in the moment and like really embrace all that life has to offer. And some of that comes with pain. Some of that comes with difficult times. And, I struggled in that program for becoming a therapist because a lot of stuff just didn't make sense to me. Like when you talk about building that muscle of resiliency, like, resiliency doesn't come because life is like good. It's peaches and cream. Resiliency comes from the adversity that we experience. Resiliency comes from the pain that we experience. Like, and if you're trying to keep yourself in a bubble to like not experience it, baby, that might be why the mental health numbers are up. Now, granted, I got my own opinion about why I think that the data is starting to look even worse. I mean, some people will say COVID, but I disagree. But let's talk about what's normal. Like, what's normal? Like, as long as you live on this earth, what's normal?
Everything is normal, right? Growth is normal. The lack of feeling growth is normal. If you feel like you're in a place and things ain't moving the way you want it to, that's normal.
But what about like the real stuff? Like,
But I think that is the real stuff, because I think that is what people are dealing with. They're getting to places to where they're looking around and things look the same, or they're not where they're supposed to be. So automatically, I'm stuck. I must be depressed. I must have an issue. I think that those are the things, right? And like, if we talk about the topics, right, I think it's marriage and the way that people do things, you colliding with someone else, it's normal.
Right. And I love that you say like marriage and colliding with other people, because a lot of times what we don't understand is the way that we understand ourselves is through other people.
Right.
And that starts very early on. Like if you got a world of boundaries that's trying to keep you away from people, I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that, but you have to be able to open yourself out, because I always say, like, especially if you've been in therapy, and you know when people come out therapy, these are all of the red flags. Make sure you avoid this. If you still gotta avoid it, like, have you really healed or grown? Like, would be my question. Like, what are we avoiding? How do you know that you truly overcome unless you engage? You have to engage back in life so that life can say, you know what, Cieara, you passed that test. Now I got a much more complex test for you now. And then it gets like that. It continues to get like that. I think about, because I've been on LinkedIn a lot. It's all about like these toxic workplaces, and
which is normal.
It is normal. Like, how do you know a good workplace or a good boss without knowing like the toxicity of being at a bad place? Like,
right.
You don't have anything to compare.
How can you even appreciate the good workplace if you haven't seen the bad workspace or the bad bosses or the toxic leaders? Like, how can you start to appreciate those things if you haven't experienced the latter?
Right. When I was just listening to you, one of the things that just came to my mind was people say, like, why do people really struggle with their mental health? And we're talking about adults here. And I know that when I got some great clients, counseling and coaching clients, and I'm so appreciative for the people that have like come into my life, because they've validated me in a sense in terms of like, you might be onto something. And I say that because, we talk about adult development, right? And this whole inner child versus adulthood. Personally, me, I'll go to the past with you and talk about like your childhood, but you spend more time in your adulthood than you spend in childhood.
Or any hood.
Yeah. Right, you do. You think about, you got 18 years. And then depending on how much time that you're here on this earth, like once you hit 40, you know more about adulthood than you know about childhood. But some people want to stay like in childhood, like, and I get it, right? Because we like to make sense out of life. How did I become the way that I become? How do I start really choosing for myself? But you're an adult. You are not a child. You are an adult.
So I was recently listening to one of our podcasts, and we had a guest on that said, like, how do you know that, like, I can pull myself up by the bootstraps? Because I think essentially that's what you're saying, right? You're an adult, take responsibility. And like, how do people do that without going back?
Well, sometimes, so I'll be honest, some people, it's necessary that people go back to the past. Some people. And it's important to figure out how long you should stay in the past with the person too, because if I'm dealing with the past you, I can't focus on the you today. So how do you pull yourself up from the bootstrap? Number one is you are not a child. That's the first thing I'm going to say. You are not a child. You are an adult. You are. And if I'm being honest, I don't like working with children because the children don't have the same agency that we have as adults, because they really do. They do depend on adults to provide that structure, that framework, to be a facilitator in their growth or their healing. So that piece is hard for me, but I do like working with adults. So number one, you got to recognize that you are not a child. You're not a child anymore.
So what does that mean? Like, you're not a child anymore, other than taking responsibility, right?
You have agency over your life.
What is
like
agency
you are
over
not
your
defined,
life mean?
You are not defined by your circumstances. Like, this whole idea that this happened to me. And I didn't talk to a lot of people, and even myself, we've experienced some things as childhood. But I think that, and I'm going to say society says, because society is really us. You and I are part of society, right? That your parents didn't give you what you needed, so now it's your responsibility to give you what you needed. And sometimes people try to give themselves what they needed in childhood, and it still is not what they need today. And I think that creates a lot of conflict, which is why, like, from a therapy perspective, everybody do the CBT. Oh, I'm gonna do CBT. Changing somebody's thoughts and then changing their behaviors. And there's a lot of evidence behind it. I practice CBT too, but I really want to get to know the person first. And I usually don't start with the past. At some point in the past may come up, but I really want to get to know who you are today, because we are meaning makers as humans. Like, we have to be able to make sense out of life. If we can't make sense out of life, it's rough. It's rough. If you can't figure out, like, why you have become who you've become, why you do the things that you become, you don't have a framework. So I understand the concept of going to the past, but let me get to know who you are today, because it doesn't mean that all of those things are correlated.
Right. And I think that what we're seeing for a lot of people is they like, oh, this happened in the past and this is why I am the way I am, when reality is this is the way you are today because this may be a part of you that you love, you want to share with the world, or this is just how you express yourself.
Right.
And that's okay. It doesn't have to be wrong because Jenny or Johnny don't like it. It's a part of me. And I think that is where the pathologizing would come in at, right? Is that we're making everything wrong about ourselves.
Right. There's a certain way to do anything. Even like this whole, I think is toxic, right? Like when people like, everybody needs to go to therapy. Everybody don't need therapy. Like, that's the truth. Everybody does not need therapy. And for the people that I like to say that have the self-authoring minds, they take a moment to sit back and figure out, what do I need for myself? I don't have to follow along the crowd because they say that this is the thing to do. Like, everybody really does not need therapy. Like, I've actually gotten counseling clients, and because insurance says that you got to figure out how to diagnose this person, I'm like, oh my gosh, let me figure out how to work with this person, because not everybody needs therapy. Not everybody needs to, you come into adulthood and like, okay, let me go ahead and try therapy because I know I have something to heal. Like, everybody has their own walk. Everybody has their own journey. And like, when it's your time to grow or evolve, like, life will push you towards that. So, that's a different perspective. Everybody feels like, going back to this toxicity of like, you need to heal, you need to grow. Like, I don't trust the people that say that be like, you need to go to therapy. And I'm going to be honest, because I used to say it to my husband, like when we were like in a difficulty, like, struggling in our marriage. I'm like, we need to go to therapy. And he used to be like, no, we need to figure out how to talk like adults. We don't need a mediator. And I'm like, no, that's the problem. That's the problem. And if I'm being honest, we've been able to do this work together. Mm-hmm. I think that, I don't know, like.
So I guess what you're saying is society will tell you that you need therapy and you'll push it on to other people. And I think that is what is happening today, right? Is that the moment you see something that you don't like in a person, or you see a characteristic or trait, it's like, oh, you need to heal that. You need to.
Yeah. And how, so, now that you say that, like, and the goal is to destigmatize therapy, right? If we're talking about really opening up space for people to go out and try therapy, if I come to you and say, see, girl, like how you handling certain stuff, and you remember when your dad or your mama, like, what? First of all, my defense, your wall is probably going to go up because you're still sending the same message that something is wrong with me. So I don't understand. Like, I get it, and I think that people are doing some amazing work. Like, I know some dope therapists who are really like supporting people and helping people. But child, I don't know.
So since success is complicated, right? How do we develop the mental grit to be okay with who we are and don't allow the world or people to pathologize and tell us that something is wrong with us, or that characteristic of yours ain't so great? Like how do we develop that mental grit, that build up that says, I'm okay, I like me?
Girl, it's hard. And there's no absolute answer, right? But I think that, so because I'm trying not to go so theoretical or like to this book, but because we're talking about adults,
right?
If you want to sit here and talk about your inner child, this probably ain't the podcast for you. Because I want to talk about adults, because adulthood is complex. It's challenging. Some of the stuff you see, like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to handle that. But when you talk about mental grit, it's not so much about like adding more tools and skills. We don't need more tools and skills. I like think about a container, right? Like that cup. You add all your tools and your skills into that cup, and then when it's time, you start to pull them out. That's one part of it, but it doesn't really support you in developing mental grit, because the thing is, it's how do you change the shape of that cup? How do you change the shape of your mind so that you are able to develop more perspective? So I'm gonna go into this whole adult development thing, because a lot of times the only thing we really talk about is childhood. About over half of the population of adults, 60%, have a socialized mindset, which means that, and let me to go back to what it looks like. It looks very confident. Socialized, this socialized mindset is basically, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this, because maybe I'll start with this. When people come to you in therapy and coaching, and this is as HR professionals, we have two jobs. All of us are doing two jobs in life. The first job is probably all the things that you identify with. And then that second job is we find ways to manage other people's expectations. We wear a mask. We try to hide our insecurities. And that within itself takes a lot. So what ends up happening is we say, okay, I'll go to therapy. I'll go to college. I'm going to find myself. And what ends up, we become loyal to these things that we think could really help us elevate and get to the next level, when really we really haven't really assessed like what's best for me. And the thing about having a socialized mindset as an adult is it doesn't, like, you can be higher from a developmental standpoint on different situations. So you think about like one of the things in the tech industry, right? A lot of people are being laid off. And granted, when you're laid off, it affects like your home life. It affects you from a financial position. But like, what really causes a person pain when they're laid off? It's their loyalty to Facebook or Google. Like, you are so happy to have been a part of this, because that's how we make sense of who we are, that now you mad. And now is, they didn't think about the people. They could have did it a better way. Ain't no easy way to fire nobody. That's number one. Like, it never gets easy to fire somebody. People do the best that they can. And there are some people that don't think about humans before they do that, but there's no way. And what ends up happening is it forces you to start figuring out like what's for you. So it's the attachment. How do we build mental grit? Is I think that you have to go back and figure out, what is it that I'm attached to? Am I too attached to my blackness? Am I too attached to my role as a mother? Am I too attached to my role as a wife? Am I too attached to my education? Am I too attached to healing? Am I too attached to growth? Because attachment really does cause suffering. And when life presents something different, that attachment, it normally conflicts with something that's like internal.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is, don't get attached to what you think you are or think things should be, and that's how you build mental grit. So if somebody like, oh girl, I don't like your parents and style, but you think you're a great mother, don't get attached to what you see, what you feel being a mother means.
Yeah, because
or what it should look like, because it's all going to be different for us.
Yeah, and you know, all criticism is not somebody projecting. And that's a default that we like to do too. Like, if I challenge the way that you think about or see the world, I mean, even me, I'm guilty of it, more so in my marriage, because I would say that my marriage has really challenged me to like grow. I'm like, no, that's your stuff. Like, no, you projected. No, like he may just really said something very valid, but because we're so busy thinking about what other people fall short, we're not even able to receive something that could really be like that next gem for that next level. Like, criticism or constructive criticism doesn't mean that a person is always projecting. And you do it like on social media, people are like, you know, people spend hours blocking people, deleting comments and like trying to like avoid the trolls. Like, that's a part of life. Like, lean into that stuff, like, because we're just not the same. We start to understand, like, you want to challenge your mental grit, get on social media and share something that may not be popular or that anybody could disagree with. You're probably going to have a person that comments on it and be like, it doesn't make sense. It's negligent. I mean, we were talking about somebody telling me that you made an absolute statement the other day because I did a post that said, I don't trust nobody that's been in therapy for years. Now, granted, you needed to read the post, but I will tell you that studies say that if you've been in therapy for a long time, like at some point, prolonged therapy is not effective anymore.
Why don't you trust anybody who's been in therapy for years?
Because you don't trust your damn self. Because you don't trust yourself. At some point, therapy is supposed to set you up so that you feel like I can go out and do life on my own. I can live autonomously and independently from that therapist. Now, I'm not saying that you may not ever return to therapy, because you may. You may return to therapy because we have these transitional phases in life to where it could be aging parents. It could be your own health, death, grief, or whatever. So you may return to therapy, but some people are paying to talk to their friend. Like, I can come and talk to you because at some point I'm human too. Like, and I like some of my clients too. So sometimes like it's a challenge to stay outside of their box. But at some point, if I'm still seeing you for 8 years, I'm not even doing therapy anymore.
You're going to be showing them Caden and Cam and all that stuff.
Exactly, because I'm human. Like, you know, there's the counter transference. Like, there's emotional dependence to some degree. And, you know, I ain't like some people, I'm not going to go there. I was going to say some people even lie about their lives in therapy just to be seen. Now, some people will say, no, it's their worldviews and how they took it in. That is true, but I've seen it. Some people will come in and lie about their whole life because
society says you need to be fixed and you need to go to therapy.
And it was your childhood. Like, I've actually had a client that came in before and was like, I'm just coming in because I'm just finally ready to be healed. Now, you know, I always ask because, you know, I want the power. I want you to feel like you should really be driving this session. Now, I have the tools and skills to facilitate those conversations, but why do you feel you need to heal? Well, because my childhood. Okay, tell me a little bit more about your child. And then you find out a few sessions, childhood wasn't as bad as they thought. You just don't want to be an adult.
And so I'm guessing basically when you say you don't want to be an adult, you don't want to take responsibility.
Yeah, responsibility is hard. Responsibility and accountability is really hard because, to be honest, we can always find somebody else to blame. It is easy. I mean, I can think of a lot of people that I can blame for a lot of stuff. But to be honest, it has never really served me. It's never really served me.
And what does blame do?
Blame keeps us from living a soft life. That's the best way. Like, everybody wants to live a soft life, but it is very hard to live a soft life if you're always finding ways to blame other people. And it keeps you stuck in victimhood too, to some degree. So I mean, but I get it because a few years ago, I mean, I was blaming a lot of people. Like the complexity of life had just got to be a little rough. And I'm like, this person fall, I did this because of that. And I did. And then to really take accountability is probably the most freeing thing in the world.
But yet one of the hardest things. It is the
hard.
hardest thing. When you say, I am here because of me, like that.
Yeah, because at some point you really are.
Right. Especially in adulthood.
Which is why some people still say, you know, like go to therapy because you are responsible for your own life. But I think that we have to be able to peel that back as well, because responsibility looks different for everybody. Like it doesn't look the same. Responsibility doesn't look like therapy for everybody. Responsibility doesn't look like having a coach, going to college. Like it really does look different for everybody. I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but I do want to say this because just thinking about us being Black, right? The first time that I ever went to therapy was Ahmaud Arbery, like, and I done been through, my mama done died from drugs. I was already in an abusive relationship at an early age, like abortion, like so many things at this point. And it wasn't until Ahmaud Arbery was murdered around the time with George Floyd. And I went to therapy. And I went to therapy because I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Every time this happens in the world, I don't want to feel that we're not moving forward as a culture. We're not moving forward as people. But more importantly, I don't want to pass certain things down to my son. So it wasn't about like, I wanted to figure out how to lean into life. One of the things I did not choose to see somebody that looked like me, because if I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm hurting, you're hurting, so your ability to really show up. So I was open to somebody really challenging my Blackness and understanding that's one part of me. That's one thing that defines who I am as a person. And I'll be honest, I'm not saying that I don't feel the pain when I see the injustices, but it's not the same anymore because you part of developing as an adult is being able to hold several perspectives. Sometimes, I mean, you might call it rationalized. Sometimes, even from a slavery standpoint, I feel like, why we didn't figure it out first? Why didn't we hold people captive? Because it's perspective. I don't want to go down there, but it really is. It really is perspective. And a lot of us are not able to hold several perspectives that elevate us to the next level, to where we feel like we're really transforming. You sound like you got a lot on your mind right now. You sound like you girl.
Said a mouthful, girl. You said a mouthful. I mean, Lord, I don't even know where to jump in at. But let's start with you going to therapy and it being around Ahmaud Arbery, right? And I think there was an attachment there, right? Mm-hmm. Of what you felt like life should be like for an Ahmaud Arbery is why you went to therapy, right?
Well, one, I felt like he didn't deserve that. I don't feel like anybody does, but I really was able to put my own son in his shoes, and I couldn't fathom. I'm like, so you mean to tell me, like, you can have all of this education, you can finally feel like you made it, and this is what we have to look forward to? And that's why I say, like, depression, it's that deep feeling of like no hope. Like, no matter how much I try, it's a reminder that I'm still Black. And it was too much for me to process. It's like, why do I do anything that I do? Like, how do I instill hope in my child without like saying, son, you're Black. This is what you're going to come up against. Like, he doesn't even understand that at this point. Like, kids think very concretely. They don't have the ability to think abstractly. So how do I still, and I would say protect him in some way to where I'm not pushing my own stuff onto him, because I'm in a different generation, so I teeter-totter. But my kids are they're innocent. Like, They don't understand life in the way that we do. Shit, I don't even understand life sometimes, but I have given up trying to understand it too.
And is that being okay with who you are, your views, the way that you see the world, not necessarily saying, oh, I need to be fixed because this may not be like the norm.
I'm not broken.
Right.
You can't tell me that I'm broken. I'm just not gonna accept that. Like, and to some degrees of fear, right? If I accept that, if we really accepted that I'm broken, how the hell do you move on? Like, how do you ever say like I am truly happy? If you accept I'm broken, but therapy or whatever gives me enough tools to be able to cope with life. Like every time like life gets a little bit more, gets a little harder, you knock right back down.
Right.
And I don't want to live like that, because the longer that you're on this earth, especially as an adult, it just gets even more complex. It gets even more complex. Like the complexity of being an adult, whether you choose to be an entrepreneur, you're growing in your career, like every phase of life is going to require a different version of you. And a lot of us try to go into that new season with like some of the same things, and it just doesn't work. And a lot of it is perspective. People don't struggle with their mental health because of their circumstances. People struggle with their mental health based off of how they think. They struggle with their mental health based off of their beliefs, their perspectives, their worldviews.
How do you widen the way that you think? How do you widen your perspectives? How do you widen your worldviews? Because if we're going to create change, it's really, really supporting people to do those things, right?
I go back to the first thing I said. Number one, recognizing that you're an adult. The second thing I would say is you have to be open to feedback, criticism, things that don't sound like the norm of what you're typically hearing. Like I said, everybody's not always projecting. And let's just say that they are projecting, right? There may be something within what they said that could just make you sit back for a second and say, you know what, let me think about this. And I don't think we do that often, because at some point you find this safety, the safety net. You feel comfortable in doing it this way because it serves you.
Right.
And so I understand that, but I don't know. I just feel like, it's always like protect my peace. There's no peace in protecting your peace. Like,
oh, am I not seeing that so much more lately? What I feel is whenever people try to protect their peace, what ends up happening is they just delay the drama. They delay the fallout. You're not necessarily protecting anything. You're just delaying it because it's coming.
It damn sure is. It's coming.
So
it's coming.
I mean, I challenge myself to lean in whenever I feel the need to protect my peace. If I got to protect my peace, that may mean I need to go like this. What you say?
It's hard though.
It is.
Because I don't want to negate that. Like life can be hard. Life can be challenging. Life can really feel like you don't want to do it anymore. Like it's real. Like I'm not negating any of those things, because there's some stuff that we that we both have experienced, and I'm like, I don't want to go through this. Like I don't want to go through this per se, but
that's the only way though. That is the only way, is to go through. Like as much as we think we can go around it, as much as we think we can hop over it, as much as we think that we can skip the pain, the trauma, and let me not say trauma.
That's the trigger for me. That's enough.
Anyways, as much as we think that we can go around it, we can't. we have to go through it.
Right.
I mean, that is the only way to essentially deal with life, widen your perspectives, and stop thinking
grow,
you gotta be
develop.
healed.
That's the word I like to use. Develop. So much, you know, as children, right? You know, as parents, we look at developmentally, like how are they progressing? But we don't talk enough about what does it mean for an adult to develop, because being grown doesn't necessarily make you grown. Like age doesn't mean like you have any more wisdom than my 7-year-old.
True.
Like it doesn't. And I think that, and I'm not gonna say for the people that got it, but I think that I feel like I've been pulled, because I really struggled in that program. Like I was like, I don't like therapy. I don't like the mental health industry. And I was like, I got to figure out like, where are these frustrations coming from? And they were coming from a bunch of different places, because I have a lot of identities, right? One of it was being Black. Like when I kept seeing the data, like I actually had a professor, I'm like, where does the data come from? The data that keeps telling us that we're healed, we're broken. Like if you go into projects in the hood, or like to the places where they don't necessarily have resources, of course the numbers, the data is going to show that people's mental health may be suffering. Because you start to talk about people's basic needs, some of the things that you need just to be able to show up. So to me, that doesn't even make sense anymore. I want to know where the data is coming from. Who said that? Like who said that?
Because when we talk about who said that, then we can get into agendas, right? Like if the data is skewed, it's skewed for a reason. It's skewed to make you feel or see something in a certain light. And
right.
If I continue to go to these places where the resources are limited and lacking, they will show these same things.
That's the one.
But when I go into these other areas where they do have the tools to deal with these transitional issues, they do have the tools to really support what mental health is and understand what mental health is, the data is widely different.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, you know, just like any industry, mental health is it's a business too. It's a business too. And I'm not saying that people are trying to take advantage of it, because a lot of how we see it is based off of our perspectives and our worldviews. But it is a business. Like the only way that you have a business is if you have a problem, a solution that you're providing to people. And if I continue to tell you that you're unhealed and you're broken, you keep coming back. Right. I got a customer for life. And I personally, whether I'm working with you from a coaching standpoint, therapy, I don't want to see you forever. I don't. I do not want to see you forever, because I'm starting to think about my evolution at that point. I don't want to see you forever. I need you. I want to open up space for other clients to be able to come in, because I'm always like, as much as people feel like you're giving to them, those clients give back to you in ways as well. So I don't want to see you for forever. Now, I'm not saying that this applies across the board, because mental illness is real. We don't all have a mental illness. We may experience it, but we all have mental health. And it's not a one size fits all in terms of what therapy or healing or growth should look like for you. But my mind just went to medication. We're gonna have to talk about it another time too, because that's the other part too. Like when we talk about destigmatizing mental health too, it needs to expand beyond just going to therapy, because there are some people that come into therapy that actually need medication too. And I'll tell you, especially for us, we may have gotten over that hump to come see you, but when you start talking about medication, we're like, I got some natural herbs. I got this. But truth be told, depending on what your experience is, sometimes you may need a few things. Medication. And I've seen it too. So and that's another thing. I'm so grateful for the clients that have come to me, because we look the same, but the trust that they give you. I'm like, I always ask, like, how do you feel about medication? Most people are, I don't really know about that. Like, I don't really know about that. I mean, I can talk to you, but I don't know about it, because my grandma said, don't let nobody give you no medication. But the medication sometimes is, depression causes a chemical imbalance it may be necessary so that your therapist can reach you. But I think that when we say destigmatizing mental health, destigmatizing mental health is not just saying that, oh, go and talk to a therapist. It's really understanding what mental health is and what it is not. It's understanding that it's not a one size fits all. It's understanding that it's understanding life to some degree. It's starting to step outside of your norm, understanding how we develop as humans, as people. So I think that like the work that has been done so far, it's great. Like a lot of people are breaking generational curses. You know, a lot of us are trying to implement gentle parenting, like, you know, making our children feel heard and seen in ways that we may not have been. And it's great. But I think that the mental health has swung so far to the left, and we need to bring it back to the center, because I don't know, I feel like we're losing the skill of resiliency. Like nobody wants to like do life or do the hard stuff anymore. And that's the part that like hurts me. Like I want to develop children that are equipped to deal with what life is going to offer them, whether it be social media, whatever technological advances, because the world's just going to continue to progress. And that's what makes it more complex. Like we had AOL and stuff like that, and now we got social media and all those things. But can you imagine like our kids, what they will have? Like you were saying the other day, they may have flying cars. Like, and you have to be able to pivot.
Right.
Like you have to be able to pivot, because that's the part about developing as an adult. As life gets more complex, your ability to maneuver through the complexities in a way that allows you to fully engage.
So what I hear you saying is people need to put the cape back on. It's okay for us to be strong. It is okay for us to be resilient and go through some things. That doesn't mean that we're broken. It doesn't mean that we won't be able to do life.
Baby, I ain't taking my cape.
It's okay to be strong.
I'm okay with being strong. I'm not going to play victim to my strength. I'm not playing victim to my strength. It is the thing that has gotten me through. Do I have my days some days? Yes, I do, but I am not playing victim to strength.
Right. I think that's the thing, right? Is a lot of people, they don't want to be strong anymore. They want to be
heard, seen, validated.
But we need to do the work. Because I mean, if I look at like some of the greats, what they have said is like hard times create strong people. Good times create weak people. And if we really look at it, we've been in some great times. And I think that is where people don't necessarily feel like they want to do the work. Why do the work when things are good, right? Why should any part of life be rough or tough if everything can be great?
Right.
But life did not get to where it is today without hardship.
No, it didn't.
Somebody put it on their back.
Somebody did. I like that. Somebody did put it on their back. They did. That was good. I don't know how much time we have left.
I don't know either.
That was so good. Like my heart feels full right now. And it feels full because I was terrified coming into this session. And changing the way that, like, what we would bring to our audience, because I don't want to negate what people are doing and what they're trying to do. But I also don't want to listen to what I feel like God is telling me either, in terms of what your purpose is. So it's not that I'm saying don't seek help, but you need to chew on some of that shit before you decide to swallow it. I don't care who it comes from, your doctor, your therapist, your coach. Before you swallow everything that life has to offer, because life got a lot to offer these days. Like, it's information overload.
Right. Even this stuff that we saying, like, chew on it. It's not a one size fit all.
It's no absolutes either. Like, we could be wrong as two left shoes. I mean, you could be like, everything that we said is crazy. But give yourself the space to really chew on what we're saying. And chewing on it means, like, what about what they're saying could support me? What about it does not serve me? Before you decide to swallow it and digest it. Because once you've digested it, that's where the difficulty comes from, because we've become attached to something.
Right.
So I think that we should wrap it up here. I think I feel good about what we've shared so far. I'll kind of pause, because I can get to become like really emotional sometimes, like a crybaby. I'm happy to be doing this again with you. We've been trying to figure this thing out. At first, Cieara had told me, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, because she's into trading now, and basically like rejected me.
I did not reject her, y'all.
On the podcast.
Look, I am a professional trader. I am a certified life coach, and I also am an HR professional, and a mother, and a friend, and all of these things. A wife. Like, I did not reject her. I just said I want to be able to offer something helpful on your podcast. And I am absolutely passionate about trading. I mean, that's where my heart is.
Right.
So, wanting to honor and keep space for that, but also know I love having these conversations with you, right? So being able to support all of that.
I was a little bit in my feelings, but.
And I didn't even tell her no, y'all. I was just like, let's see like what I can offer. And then she was like, whoop, I found another host.
I did not find another, but I am so grateful that you are here with me. Even our friendships, our friendship has been tested and challenged in a lot of ways. And we've been doing this thing for over 20 something years together. So I'm happy to be in this space with you. And I'm excited to see what Success is Complicated, the value that it adds to other people's lives. So we're going to go ahead and close out here. This is the Success is Complicated podcast. And I am RaQuel Hopkins, your host.
And I am Cieara Davis, your co-host.
And the way that I want to end this podcast is be okay with throwing spaghetti at the wall. You do not have to have it all figured out. The minute that you think you have it all figured out, there's an opportunity to go back and reevaluate. All right, until next time.